Hello and welcome to Caroline's Library, where we dive into the world of manga, anime, and more. Today we are talking about a series that took me way too long to pick up, and that is Golden Kamuy. So let's get started with a quick high-level summary of Volume 1. Sugimoto is a battle-hardened veteran of the Russo-Japanese War, and has earned the nickname Immortal Sugimoto, because against all odds, he always seems to survive. But now that the war is over, he's desperate for money and is trying his best to pan for gold in Hokkaido. While panning, he hears a brutal story about a huge sum of gold that was stolen from an indigenous group called the Ainu, as well as the lengths that the robber took to safeguard it. You see, the robber hid the gold and tattooed its location onto 24 prisoners, who all escaped from prison, and if someone can gather the 24 tattoos, they can piece together the map to find the treasure. Having no luck with his gold panning, Sugimoto decides to hunt down these prisoners who are hiding around the Hokkaido area. But in the wilderness, he's at a bit of a disadvantage because while he's very good at fighting people, wild animals are a different story. So when he's attacked by a bear, the immortal legend is put to the test when a young girl named Shirpa comes to his rescue and kills the bear. How does this young girl successfully kill a monstrous bear? Well, she's an Ainu experienced hunter, and this wilderness is like her backyard. So, obviously seeing a great opportunity to team up, Sugimoto shares the story about the hidden gold with a Sherpa, and because the gold was stolen from her Ainu people, she wants in on this treasure hunt. But while our MCs share a common goal, it's for two very different reasons. For Sugimoto, it's for the money that he so desperately needs. For a Sherpa, it's for revenge against the robber who killed her people to get to the gold. With that story set up behind us, let's take a look at what makes this manga series absolutely amazing, starting off with the great cast of characters. Like I mentioned earlier, Sugimoto is a military vet who fought so hard during the war that he earned the nickname Immortal. But despite the horrors he committed and witnessed during the war, he still manages to be a goofy and kind guy who comes across as a genuinely good person, which leads to a wonderfully written character who's this brutal and deadly soldier capable of tender and caring moments, and Sugimoto is probably my number one favorite character in this series. As for Ashirpa, she is an extremely capable, independent, and savvy hunter with a deep love and appreciation of animals, and her knowledge serves a critical role in keeping her and Sugimoto alive in the wilderness. Plus, her insight is a cool addition to learn about another culture and other interesting survival facts throughout the story. And as our two MCs work together, we see their relationship grow, and it is one of the more heartwarming bonds that I've read in manga. And to be clear, this is not a romantic relationship with a huge age gap. Instead, it's more like a brother-sister or father-daughter type of relationship. Now that our dynamic duo are together and they start the search for these escaped prisoners, they slowly gather allies that join them on this treasure hunt. This is where the manga officially hooked me, because we meet some well-developed, complicated, and fascinating characters. My personal favorites are Ogata, Tanigaki, and we'll just go with Sensei or Professor, depending on if you're watching the anime or reading the manga. But what I really appreciate about this series is that you may initially dislike a character, but they could become one of your favorites after a few more volumes. I won't mention any of my later favorites because of potential spoilers, but I was genuinely surprised by who I ended up loving by the end of the series. And with all of that in mind, you've got to remember that many of these individuals are also going for the gold. So how well can Sugimoto and Ashirpa truly trust someone who could turn on them at any moment when the opportunity presents itself? With that unsettling and nerve-wracking dynamic, Satoru Noda does an amazing job of adding in well-executed plot twists and unexpected questions that add suspense and drama with each volume. I was never sure who the MCs could trust, and as the characters' bonds grow and as we learn more about each person, it makes inevitable betrayals that much more impactful and emotional. Speaking of learning more about each character, the mangaka also incorporates extremely detailed and heart-wrenching backstories. For me, Ogata and Tanigaki's backstories were especially impactful, and whether you trust them or not, you feel for these characters who have been through the ringer. But mixed into this suspenseful and dark story are some truly laugh-out-loud moments of complete chaos. Satoru Noda does a phenomenal job of making the world feel alive with most of these goofy moments. It was like we were really getting a glimpse of all sides of our characters' lives as they embarked on this insane treasure hunt. The scenes meshed together to really bring the story to life. On top of this nice storyline balance, the series also teaches you quite a bit about indigenous cultures and wildlife. My personal favorites were how the Ainu people prepare and cook their food, whether if it was sashimi or shiratop style. Plus, the changes in fauna and flora also serve as a nice and subtle way to indicate seasonal changes, and these little details are a nice touch and sincerely appreciated. So, we've got an incredibly unique story, amazing characters, nail-biting suspense, and a nice balance of tense and relaxed moments. But obviously, not everything is great about this story. Luckily, my issues are pretty small. First, the manga can be a little repetitive in the early volumes, with some of the smaller scenes, like when a Sherpa tries to make Sugimoto eat yet another raw animal organ, or when they have to catch and eat a variety of wild animals. And as for the anime adaptation, it did a pretty good job of cutting out most of this repetition. Second, there are a handful of characters that are just a bit too weird for me, with some really uncomfortable fetishes. In particular, there's a taxidermist, a bestialist, and a sadomasochist that are just too much. Now, some of these characters definitely help to serve a purpose to show just how mentally unstable some of the prisoners are, but wow, you really went there, didn't you? Luckily, these especially odd characters tend to have their 15 minutes of fame and then exit stage left, so if they're rubbing you the wrong way, just power through it and they'll be gone soon enough. And lastly, a few of those lighter, chaotic moments felt more absurd than others, especially in the second half of the series, like when Sugimoto and friends join a circus show. And it technically has a purpose, but if we're being honest, it was a bit of a stretch. And again, when the group decides to film a movie where it just became a cluster of ridiculous scenes. Did I laugh during these chapters? Yes. Were they 100% idiotic? Also, yes. But again, these are pretty small complaints about a handful of moments. All things considered, Golden Kamuy is a weird, quirky, brilliant, hilarious, violent, and historically rich story, and easily one of the best seinen manga series that I've ever read. Honestly, I cannot believe I slept on this for so long. It is without a doubt in my top 10 best series I've ever read so far. And the anime adaptation is extremely well done to the point where I might actually like the anime more than the manga, but I highly recommend both. If you've checked out this series, let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for popping on to watch this review, and until next time, happy reading!